I think that we have been taught as women to stay small and to stay quiet and to not make ruffle too many feathers. And I'm a big
What's going on, guys? Mike Ashabi here, and welcome to another episode of the True Life Network podcast. Today, I have not one, but two awesome guests. Our guests today, one of them is an Emmy-nominated, Logie Award-winning actress, producer, director, writer, entrepreneur, and platinum-selling recording star. She's the face of Pepsi, and you've probably seen her on Disney's Hannah Montana and Pretty Little Liars. Joining her is a celebrity interviewer, on-camera entertainment host, social media influencer, and fashion expert. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of popular style and entertainment website, redcarpetroxy.com. They are the co-hosts of Women on Top, which is a female empowering podcast that covers hot-button topics and pop culture. Today, I bring to you Tammin Sursok and Roxy Manny. Guys, thank you for joining me.
That was an introduction, if ever there was one.
That really was. I mean, you hit all the big points.
I know. I was like, wow, I do sound pretty cool.
Not too shabby, not too shabby.
Not too shabby.
So guys, I do want to jump into your background in just a little bit, but the first thing I do want to ask you, women in power, that's something that we need to get more awareness around. Women in the entrepreneurial space, I think that it's not something that most people put too much focus on, and it's something up and coming, right? And I think that a lot of women are having challenges breaking into the industry. And I kind of want to start with your guys' challenges and the obstacles that you guys have faced that, you guys overcame and started, to really allow yourselves to be in the positions that you guys are in.
I mean, I'm not sure that, female entrepreneurship or females in business has been new. I don't. I feel like we've been doing this. I mean, I was a child actor. I started making my own money at 14 years old. Roxy as well started straight out of college. She was working, earning her own money. I'll let Roxy take over after I say this. But, for me, it's just like, I think that women are less ashamed of it now. I think that we have been taught as women to stay small and to stay quiet and to not make ruffle too many feathers. And I'm a big man lover. I'm married to an amazing man. I love so many men in my life, but I think what happens sometimes is women are just told to stay nice and stay pretty and stay sweet and don't make a scene. Don't get too big. Don't talk about wanting to make money or it's greed, right? So I don't think it's the concept. I don't think is new at all. I just think that women are now, the shame is leaving. We care about people. We just don't care anymore to try to stay in a box. And especially for me in the last 5 years, I'm like, screw it. Why when I walk into a room and I'm the only woman there, am I sort of not looked at in the eye? And it's not that I'm saying it's against men and women, but I think women have just as many ideas. They're just as smart. They can make just as much money. And I think a woman in the workplace is such an advantage to a male's workplace as well. And I think if we can all sort of work together, we can realize it's not supposed to be like women coming up. We can all do this together. Having a man in my business is super helpful. Having a woman in a male-dominated world is super helpful because we bring different perspectives and ideas, and women are also very nurturing. They think of things differently. The way that they problem solve is very different to men's. So I just think, again, back to your question, I don't think it's new. I just think that that maybe you just see it more because we're less ashamed of it.
Well, and I think too, just touching on Tammin's point, on our podcast on Women on Top, we really sort of talk about these topics and really bring them to the forefront. Whereas, I mean, even as recently as 5 years ago, people were still not talking about it as openly as we are now. So I think that is something that's really important to both Tammin and I. So we kind of really, get the ball running on our podcast and talk about everything. But I think too, it's also sort of stepping into your power and into your confidence. And like the older, I think probably Tammin feels this way too, but I know the older that I get, each year I think I feel a little more confident just in as far as like stepping into the power and, not caring as much as what people think as maybe when I was younger, where I was like, kind of a little more quiet and a little bit more, not as bold, I want to say, as I am now. So I think it's like kind of breaking down those walls and really feeling comfortable and confident enough to step into your power, because, men do it all the time. Men step into their right, men step into their power a lot. And it's like, for some reason, I think women, like what Tammin was saying, like we've sort of been taught to like be the quieter sex and, not be too loud and all of these things. And I know I grew up with a lot of that too, that kind of programming. So I think now it's a really exciting time for all of us and especially women, because we're really kind of, we're pushing the envelope and we're just getting out there and doing what we deserve to do.
So what are some things that you guys did to kind of overcome? I think it comes down to fear, right? I think a lot of women
everything's based in fear.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I believe.
I mean, but what's fear? It's false evidence appearing real. So it comes down to their perception. And
Of
I think
course.
because of the marketplace and the way that it's been conditioned for so many years, a lot of women are just kind of fearful to kind of step into their power roles, right? And I think that it's so important to bring more individuals like you guys to be leaders for these females, to kind of give them a voice and show them a way that they can actually go ahead and gain that confidence and really shift their perspective to really go ahead and take stand in the industries. I think that, to tell you the truth, I think that you guys have an advantage in sales. I'll tell you that for a fact, because I actually have a sales background. My company is a sales training company. And I've noticed that sometimes when I'm trying to get in contact with a certain prospect, and then I have my assistant do it, who's a female, that she gets the answer right back like that. And I'm just like hitting them so many different times. And I'm like, what's going on here? So I think you guys do have that advantage. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I just think, look, women, not all women have to have children, but Roxy and I are mothers, right? So every day it's kind of like a like trying to figure out ways to get what you need and get what you want. Obviously, all mothers would love their children to listen, but that's not necessarily going to happen if you just raise your voice or you shame them or you get like that's not going to work, right? So what are the ways that with your children you can communicate? And that's what I think women really bring to the business side, is like communication. So with my children, when they're acting out, I firstly ask like how are they feeling? Like what is going on? Because children, like their brains don't fully develop till they're 25. They normally tell me what's going on, and then we find solutions. And then so my kids, look, sometimes, yes, I do yell at them, but my intention is not to yell at them to get what I want. And that's not going to work for women. Like us yelling, we just seem like bitchy and egotistical and up ourselves. So we're like, okay, we can't do that. Whereas sometimes I feel like a man can, like you raise your voice and then everyone listens. Whereas a woman is like, no, you can't do that. So then we have to, if we can't do that, which I don't think is the right way anyway, I'm like, what can we do? And we got to find, again, solutions and tactics. And like my husband always says like women manipulate, right? And I actually do believe, I don't know if Roxy thinks, I actually do believe it's ingrained in us. Not that we're trying to, and our intention is to manipulate, but it's almost like you have to manipulate a situation because it's the only way to get in, right? Because if you're always the last in line and you're always the one who's not getting the job because you're considered that you're not smart enough or you're not this, then you have to manipulate a situation to try to figure out how to win the situation. So maybe women are innate manipulators, and maybe that's not such a negative word. Maybe we need to like change that word around and say like, maybe it's not manipulation. Maybe it's like, maybe it's just like molding, right? Molding a situation or something.
I would actually, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I would shift that word to influence.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when you look at manipulate, I think this is a huge problem in the world. Most people actually go ahead and use verbiage that they don't really understand what they're saying, right? And I think that really comes down to when you truly understand what you're saying, understanding the definition of words, right? you're actually become a more effective communicator, and you're more confident because you truly have that understanding, right? For example, there's a lot of people that use words that they don't understand what they're actually saying. It's common words, but if you actually look up the definition of it, it'll give a completely different meaning to a sentence or a phrase that you're actually saying. I think that's where it comes down to truly understanding what you're saying so that you have that in-depth understanding, so that you're really bringing that reality to somebody else. That's effective communication. And I think that really helps with confidence, because at the end of the day, the definition of confidence, I'm really big on definitions, right? The definition of confidence is the self-assurance and appreciation of one's own abilities and or qualities, right? So let's look at that for a second. The self-assurance and appreciation of one's own abilities and or qualities. So what does that come down to? Understanding who you are. So what you're telling yourself is a huge part of that, and truly understanding that in order to bring that out to the world.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I also think too, just kind of going back to like the men and women sort of thing and as it relates to sales, I think women are very, very clever in that many of us have figured out how to sort of harness our sexual power, like just our sexual being in general. Now, I'm not saying, throwing it all out there and, hitting on whoever, like, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like, I think women are very astute, and they know that there is, because especially if there's like sort of a situation, like work situation, even between men and women, there can be sort of an underlying sexual tension. I don't even know if tension's the right word, but like, it's different. It's different than when you're like communicating with another woman, let's say, or when a man is communicating with another man. And I think it's actually quite interesting when women are able to sort of harness that, and use it.
I mean, I agree with that, but at the same time, I think that there's ethical ways of doing things and unethical, right?
Right.
To me, I feel like, especially in the corporate world, a lot of women are trying to climb that corporate ladder through utilizing their sexual abilities, maybe, presence, right? Their sexual presence, right? Just maybe not doing anything intentionally, but at the same time, flirting, like just the way that they're communicating and things like that. And I think it's actually, when you look at certain women individuals, in the business side, the ones that actually take a stand and are confident, to really just make it strictly business and show people really their abilities rather than utilizing that influence. I think that's, something really that we got to help, a lot of women these days kind of take more advantage on their own abilities rather than their looks and things like that.
Well, yeah, but I don't even, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I don't even think it's like necessarily the flirting aspect. I just think that power is sexy. So that is part of that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Like, I agree with that.
Like, I'm not saying, you know what I mean? It's not like unethically kind of trying to hit on some guy or something to close a deal. I mean, like like being powerful and having that is perceived as sexy,
Essence. For me, like I've never, being an actor, it's never really been, I haven't been in the corporate world, but I do think that you have to go back to the why, right? So if we say women have used their sexuality, and this is not what Roxy was saying, but if we say that she was, but she wasn't, if they're using their sexuality or they're flirting to get ahead, right? Which happens. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they feel like it's the only way for them to be noticed or wanted or whatever. So women who do that, like, back 5 years ago when I hadn't done a lot of self-help on my work on myself, I'd be like, oh, how dare she do something like that? That's just so wrong. It's so unethical. But then I always go back to the why. The reason why women are doing that is because they feel like there's no other way to get ahead. Now, I know what you were saying. You were saying, well, it'd be so great to just be confident and be in those rooms and use your education and your abilities, right? Use that. But most of the time, that doesn't work. Most of the time, you're still, unfortunately, in a room and you're looked over, or when you speak, someone speaks over you. So I think it's a bigger conversation of why are women using that to get ahead? Again, not what Roxy and I have done because we're in different worlds like that. But, and also like, I have too much insecurity. I'd like, what if the person rejected me? It would be so embarrassing. But why do women use that? And maybe that's the bigger conversation about giving women those opportunities when they're in a room and letting them talk and giving them like, you know what, the same pay for the same jobs. Like maybe that's the conversation to have. And it doesn't have to be threatening. I think all it is it helps a business grow and thrive when people who are doing the same jobs are treated the same way. And then I think women would be less likely to flirt and less likely to use that if they're in a corporate world. That's just
That's a good point, Tam, and I agree with that for sure.
I'm completely on board with both of you guys, and I think that it does take, you know, the man to realize, or the male role to realize, hey, you know what, let's make everybody equal, right? And really give everybody opportunity. But I think that most people are kind of taking the Steve Jobs route of building businesses and, you know, really looking for that power and being an asshole rather than looking at how can I be kind and build $1 billion business that way. You know, Gary Vee talks about this all the time. How can I build $1 billion business through being kind? And I think it's more, instead of focusing on separation, male, female, I think we got to focus more on humanity. I think that's the key point to it. Yeah. So, I mean, on your end, being on the female side, I'm curious, what is your perspective of things that men can do, entrepreneur men, that we can help these women who are really looking to get to a different position in their lives, to really make them feel more comfortable where they don't have to go that route, the more ethical route they can go?
I mean, I think they need to inject more funding, venture capital funding into female-owned businesses, because as it is now, you know, the playing field is not equal as far as the investing goes, and even less for women of color. So I think that as far as like really building, I mean, if you're talking like building empires and building, you know, wealth and all those great things, I mean, I think like from the top, it really has to come down, you know, and they really have to invest, like grassroots invest in these, you know, smaller up and coming female owned businesses and, you know, businesses owned by women of color, and really kind of nurture those things to really get the playing field more even.
And also, like, when you look at, like, you know, women are expected to like raise families and work, right? Or they're supposed to stay at home, and then we don't really give them, like, we don't think that that's really a real job, which it is. So Roxy and I have 3 children between us, and we both have full-time jobs. So if you want a woman, which is just, it's how we're made up. If you want a woman to still be like breastfeeding and looking after your child and still be the same person who's responding to the emails and hitting the tiers that she needs to hit when it comes to business, then have things in business like childcare facilities. Like we are raising the people and the children of tomorrow. And if you want those children to be also taken care of, plus have women in the workplace, then there has to be facilities for women who can also raise children and still be kick-ass at their job and not drop the ball. And there's like, you know, when you get to a certain age, women are at a disservice when it comes to work, because like, I know for me, I'm with my children and I'm working till like 2 a.m. in the morning on my business. And then my kid gets up at 5. So I'm running on 3 hours sleep, and somebody else is doing the same thing I am with no kids. And they're, you know, had their coffee, had their 7 hours sleep, and they're walking in, and I'm supposed to perform at the same level. And that's just not possible. You cannot perform on 3 hours sleep looking after 2 children, but you could if you had the facilities for it, if you had the help, if you had businesses where there is childcare and things like that, then women can be effective and they can do the same job and they can make the same money. But it needs to start with those businesses, you know?
Well, from your perspective, do you actually trust people watching after your children though?
Absolutely. If I'm if I'm at work and there's like 2, you know, childcare workers there, and there's lots of kids in a creche, absolutely. I mean, well, you know, it's yeah.
The reason why I'm asking that, so I actually just had a baby a week ago, So I had
Oh
a
my
little baby boy.
goodness. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're like, so I'm
appreciate it.
tired. I get it.
Oh yeah, trust me. I've been getting no sleep whatsoever. But
Welcome to the next 3 years of your life.
Yes, exactly. If you're lucky.
but the point that I'm trying to make is, so my wife is actually very, entrepreneurial, business minded. She's always a go-getter. She was actually working as an EA for an architectural firm at the same time being my EA, right?
Mhm.
So she was always go, go, go. And I think that she always has that mindset to still keep going. I think that she thinks that she could do it all. But at the same time, I come from that kind of more traditional route where I kind of want to just be like the provider. But I want her to have her freedom and do what she has to do. So from you guys being mothers, and this is actually a question for her, what are some tips to kind of keep that balance where she can keep her sanity, where she's being able to be there for our child and raise him the right way, but at the same time do what she wants and have that freedom with whatever she wants to create?
I mean, I think that it's really important, especially as moms, working moms, stay-at-home moms, is to take time for yourself and to do self-care, which is something that I'm really bad at, but have really kind of learned to embrace, right? Have really learned to embrace, is that having those moments. I mean, it can be, working out. It could be taking a walk. It could be reading a book, taking a bath. It doesn't have to be something expensive and crazy. But if you like to travel, you can do that too. Whatever it is, it's just important to prioritize yourself and to have that time away, because truly that time away makes you a better parent. Definitely. It makes you a better, right? Makes you a better worker, makes you a better spouse, partner. Because you value yourself. So you're able to value others and take care of others. So it starts with you, you really have to take care of yourself first, I think. But I do think too, if you want to get something done, hire a mom, because moms are the best time organized people that get stuff done in a, very constricted amount of time than anyone. So hire the moms.
I mean, like after I had my first baby, I was really miserable because I value my work. I have been working since I was 14 years old. I bought a house at 17. Work to me was my identity. And when I had a child, I lost that. I was like, wait a second, like, who am I now? I've always made money. I've always been in some way successful for my business. Like, who am I now? And my husband was able to continue his life and continue, not, of course he had a child, but he wasn't breastfeeding. He wasn't getting up every 2 hours. And what happens sometimes, like, well, yeah, I mean, he does now. He does all the sleeping. He's actually amazing. But, when I'm breastfeeding, it was like, I let him sleep every now, not every feed. And it was a really hard transition for me. Now I look back and I'm like, I put too much pressure on myself. But I would say to new moms, you can, and when you're a workaholic or someone who loves work, you're never going to wake up one day. Like, I don't think your wife's going to wake up one day and go, you know what? This gives me so much joy, which it does. Your children give you so much joy. But if you love work so much, it's not like one day you're just going to wake up and that's going to change. So I would have said to myself after my first baby, I would have said, you can have it all. You just can't have it all at the same time. You can have the other day I stared at my 2-year-old while she was sleeping and I stroked her head and it was beautiful. But the day of, it was kind of messy and she was watching TV and eating French fries and cookies because I had to do a podcast and I wasn't with her for that second. Right. And I wasn't the perfect mom that I wanted to be, but I was the perfect podcast host and I was the perfect actor in that second. So you can have it all, even your relationship with your husband. It's like, it will shift and it will change and your sex life will be different, but you will have that connection and you will. Yeah. Well, the sex life, because I'm highly sexually, I've always had a high sex drive, probably because it's like the work and the testosterone. I don't know what it is, but things do change, but it doesn't mean it has to be worse. It's just different. And it means that you can have that, but it's not going to happen. You're not going to have the best sex life when you're mired in all the kids stuff. Like you'll have the best sex life when you go on a 3-day trip or a little vacation with the two of you, so my biggest thing is to tell people that you can have it all, especially for women, but you cannot have it all at the same time. And then you just have to accept that.
Well, I
Yeah, and
think,
don't feel guilty, right? Like, don't
Yeah.
beat yourself
Mhm.
up over it. Like, that's so important. Like, don't feel guilty about your choices.
well, I think in general that rule kind of applies to everybody. Everybody's so
Mhm.
impatient that they just want it now, right?
Mhm.
But what they don't realize is that, okay, you know what? Let's enjoy this first. Let's, experience this, then I experience this, and then that's when you really have it all. When you've built up all those experiences over time, that's where you can actually go ahead and relay your experiences and show people what life is actually about, rather than sitting there and complaining. It's once again the perception of, oh, I can't have it right now. Now we're comparing towards other people's lives
Mhm.
rather than realizing what we have at our forefront and taking advantage of it. I think it's that being present in that moment, right? I
Mhm.
think that applies to not only moms or females. I think that applies to everybody in general.
But everyone's living for tomorrow. That's the problem, right? They're not thinking about today. They're not thinking
Yeah.
like, right? Like today, this minute, right now, right here.
Because it's
Like,
hard.
right. It is because we're in this society where it's like all about consumption and like getting to the next level and being better and like being competitive and doing all the things, which I'm not saying that that's necessarily like a bad thing because I think it can motivate people too. But I do think that like we miss really important moments. I mean,
Mhm.
I know I have, thinking about the future or thinking about something else, and it's like, I think really to be present is hard. It's a challenge to really take it all in and be where you are right here, right now.
Well, I
And I
think,
think that
go ahead.
I this quote came up.
Mm.
I love TikTok for motivational, growth mindset sort of little vignettes that it shows me. But there was like a little video that said, I think people's biggest problem is they give up what they want, what they want what they want for their future for what they want now.
Ooh,
And
I always tell everybody, stop sacrificing your long-term self-respect for short-term comfort.
Mm.
yeah.
I mean, it's so true. It's because, they're, I think this is where social media screws everything, to be honest. I know we're going a little bit off topic from the women empowerment, but I think honestly, social media has us comparing, right? We see what other people have right now, and then we want to feel that emotion of what it's like to have that, and, really get recognition through people we don't even really know. Right. And I
Mhm.
think that causes us to step away from being present on the daily basis. It's really taking us away from enjoying the people that are actually in our, immediate, surrounding.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah, I
think
agree.
social media has a big part with not being present for many
Mhm.
individuals.
And also thinking that what someone has, if they're posting something, right, and they're in Cabo or Mexico, whatever it is, or they're in Spain or Italy or where, and great bodies, and we think that
A lot of
happened
it's fake.
overnight.
A lot of it's
yeah,
fake.
a lot of it's fake, but also that it happened overnight. I know people look at my Instagram and go like, "How did you build 1.3 million followers?" I was like, over 12 years. Like it doesn't happen. Like how you acting all the time. I was like, oh, for 20 years I've been putting in the work and learning the lines and failing and
Mhm.
not getting the job and waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning to be on set, and I missed out on my honeymoon. There's so many things that I've like
You missed out
given
on your
up.
honeymoon? Bless your
we
soul.
redid it like a year, like 7 months later, but I actually left my wedding in Italy. We got married in Italy for 3 days, over 3 days, 20 people. It was amazing. And then we left the day after, so we were there for 3 days, and then we left the next day to go to, I left the next day to go to a movie. So yeah, but it was, it was great. We did it some other time, but you need to be with someone who understands that, because like I said,
Mhm.
like you give up what you want most for what you want now. So
Mhm.
what I want most is a career and a house and stability, and to be creative and getting paid for it. But what I want
Mhm.
now is a honeymoon. And what is a honeymoon? It's great. You get to travel, you get to have lots of sex and eat lots of food and drink lots of wine, and that's great. But for me, it's like what I want most for what I want now. And I wanted the whole thing and the career and the family most.
No, I mean, I think that you're spot on, because most people don't look at it like that. They just want that immediate gratification. And I think, apps
Mhm.
also like Bumble, Tinder, all that, those kind of
Mhm.
apps also ruined it for us, because we think that it's so easy. But when we actually go do it for ourselves and we don't get that instant gratification, it actually makes
Mhm.
us, depressed. And I
Mhm.
think that people don't realize that it's the time, the consistency, the actual, sacrifices. I call it investment rather than sacrifices, because you're kind of not sacrificing that long-term respect. You're putting in the work now to get what you can later. And I think that, that immediate gratification factor is what really allows us to, not really be who we're supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, it separates like the people that really want it from like the people that, are kind of wishy-washy about it. It's like, that's how you get to, there is a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it's like, nobody sees the behind the scenes when, Tammin and I, for example, are like texting each other at like 3 a.m, being like, okay, we're booking this guest, we're doing this guest, it's like,
aren't you guys on different time zones?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Literally, I wake up and she's done with her day, which is like the worst thing ever, because when I wake up, I get like 30 texts and emails from like everyone in Los Angeles. And I'm like, it's not a good way. You know how they say like, start your day not on your phone. Start your day with a glass of water and a little meditation, and then go give your kids a kiss. I'm like, fuck, that doesn't happen. Excuse my French. Like, I wake up, my phone's like, bang, it's going off. Everyone's like, why didn't you get me this? And what are we going to do here? And then 3 hours later, everyone's done for the day. And like, I'm like shaking.
Well,
so like literally 6 a.m. is hell. 6 a.m. to 1 is hell for me. And then it gets better over here.
I mean, at the end of the day, I also think it comes down to priorities, right? Like, so I get what you're saying, that, okay, at the end of the day, everybody else is waking up and whatnot. But at the same time, I have a strict rule. I don't touch my phone for the first 3 hours of my day. If I touch
it would be 1 o'clock. No, it wouldn't be 6, 7, 8. It would be 9 o'clock in the morning.
But hey, do you want to make yourself available for everybody, or do you want to make it hard to get to?
No, but it's a time zone. So it's like, 1 o'clock my time is what? It's like 4 p.m. your time.
It is.
So I would just never be available.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so flipped that like we have to like get each other. Yeah, exactly. It literally is the opposite. Like,
your night is my day and my day is your night. Like, Roxy, I want to talk to you. I'm like, oh, it's 2 p.m. She's asleep.
I know. I'm like, Tammin, how was tomorrow? Tell me about tomorrow. Because she's already lived.
I can only see the day ahead in Australia.
So you guys are working from two opposite ends of the world right now. What I want to know is, how did you guys actually get connected, and what made you guys decide to really start the podcast together and, really make a stand for women in the space?
Tammin, do you want to tell them our love story?
Well, you can tell them our love story, but I'm going to say one thing is like, I only have one superpower, and my one superpower is just these gut visceral reactions. I met my husband and I knew he was the one. Like he moved in, we did a movie together. He moved in 4 days after the movie finished. Like, I knew I was going to marry him. I knew he was the one. I knew I had to move to America when I was 20 years old. I packed my suitcases and I left with 3 suitcases from Australia, and I never came back. Like, I have these like God shock moments where I'm just like, oh. And I'd been thinking about the podcast space for a while, and I had my managers and agents being like, you should start a podcast. I know that I have diagnosed ADHD. So I know that I can do these types of things alone, but I do need someone who's like very organized to like keep me on track. That's why Roxy and I work very well. She's very organized. I do ask her like 10 times, like what the times are of things, but she's very forgiving. But I need someone to motivate me and me motivate them, or it's just going to fall apart. So like, I was in that space of like, okay. And I didn't really practice manifestation back then, but I feel like I was practicing it without knowing that I was practicing it. And I just thought to myself, like, I want to find someone who's going to be the perfect podcast host with me. And Roxy will say like where we met, but I just remember telling Sean after I met Roxy, I was like, she's the one I'm supposed to do it with. Like, I just knew. I just knew.
She just knew. So basically, she and I sat down in a park with our kids playing, and I don't know if you remember this, Tammin, but you were like, okay, Tammin has this thing where she likes to eat snacks. So she had like,
I'm right there with you.
My snacks. Oh, here they are. I wanted to eat them, but I was like, oh, I shouldn't eat. I shouldn't eat this thing.
Are those Cheez-Its?
No, they're like keto cracker thins, air popped. I don't know. I really don't know. I'll really eat any snack. So it was just available.
Some goldfish are my thing.
I have many times eaten on the podcast.
Totally. Oh my God. She used to bring these balls in. They were so good. Those balls, they were delicious.
These balls. Oh my God.
Yeah, to the studio.
Different than the other balls.
Yeah, exactly. So we were sitting on this blanket and like she had like all the snacks laid out. We were like sitting there talking. And I just remember like looking at her and I'm like, God, I feel like I've known her for like much longer than we had known each other. And it was like this quick, like back and forth. Like it was just like we were on the same, wavelength. We were almost like finishing at each other's sentences.
Definitely.
We just like,
I feel like you guys have been doing that this podcast.
Oh yeah, we like know what each other's going to say, but also I do feel like what the other person, we all have things that we lack, right? What the other person needs, the other person makes up for. That sounds like it's like a negative mindset. It's not, but like we all need, like I need organization and I need specific things. And, because of my Instagram, I'm able to reach out to people in a different way. So like I reach out and then Roxy does the email and then we set it to, so it's like this kind of flow that we have that the other person kind of
System.
bolsters but also like bolsters the other person up when they're, Roxy doesn't love vulnerable. I love to talk about vulnerability and like talk about like everything. And Roxy's like, not so much about vulnerability, but we need that. And then like, I'm trying to get her more into her vulnerable side and she's trying to get me into more of my logical side. So it just works. Like,
I'm also trying to get her to drink more tequila, but I don't know
how I drink
one
drink, 2 drinks a week. It's
I'm more of a vodka guy. Sorry, I can't
scheduled.
I'm messing. So what was that gut feeling for you? I call it intuition, right? And I think that when you actually connect with somebody where and you feel like, I feel like that feeling where you actually go ahead and feel like, okay, I've known this person for a long time, even though maybe it's been like a 30-minute, interaction. I always say that's intuition. I think that most people kind of avoid that because maybe they had 1 or 2 bad experiences following their intuition. Yeah. But I think that's honestly what has helped me get to where I'm at. I'm not sure if that's helped you guys either.
Yeah, it's weird. Definitely intuition. I used to think that I was like connected to some spiritual world because I used to have a lot of coincidences, like coincidences that are very hard to even make sense of, right? Like I was in Los Angeles. I had come from a TV show. I hadn't gotten a job and my parents were like, your money's in your house. You're not going to sell your house right now, but you're cut off. Like meaning not cut off, but like, we're not going to pay your bills anymore. And I had a choice. Like I had 2 days and I was like, oh God, I'm not going to make any money. Like, should I go back to Australia or not? And I got 3 jobs within 2.5 days of each other since that day. And like these weird coincidences, like even when I was at my last cent or like, I had like minus $2,000 in the bank, I would get a job and it would be for like $2,021, like these weird things. And I was just like, well, maybe I'm like, it's a past life thing because I do believe in God, or maybe I don't know. And the more I've been understanding manifestation, which is like believing something is manifestation, could be another word is faith, believing something has happened or has already happened. Like I have this job, I have this. Sometimes not necessarily the job will happen, but something around that job will change your life. And in 2020 October, I said to my husband, I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to be in LA anymore. And the two of us, I have my social media business, but I wasn't working in film and TV for the last 1.5 years because of COVID, and I had a baby. And I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be on set again. Like, I don't know, but I feel like if I leave LA, this was a year ago, if I leave LA, I'm going to work. I don't know why I thought that. I was like, I'm going to work if I leave LA. I've worked on now 4 projects already. I have 1 I start next week and I have 2 next year. And I hadn't worked for 1.5 years. So again, is it faith? Is it manifestation? Is it belief? I don't know, but I believe the universe is just this energy. And I do believe in that, like we talk about a lot, growth mindset and that the power of positive thinking. Like I thought that was just BS, but I wake up every day and I'm like, I'm going to have an amazing day. I'm going to make great money. I'm going to have opportunities come in. And ever since I've been doing that, it's been happening. Yeah. And it's like, it's almost like you feel like you've tapped into something magic. Like, I'm like, oh my God, is this magic? Because even Roxy started doing it and it's changing her life too. So it's like, maybe it is that book. Maybe it is The Secret, Law
of Attraction. So I got to send you guys a copy of my book. And I want to tell you, I actually have a quote that I made, and I tell everybody, look, Your mind is the one thing that has the true power to either make you or break you. And the reason behind that is because your perception will dictate how you feel will dictate how you act, and how you act will determine your results. So the way that you're actually perceiving things is actually changing, a chemical balance internally, right? Which is energy, right? And I think that's where it comes down to energy. So I'm right there with you with manifestation, because at the end of the day, most people are allowing the external to influence what's going on internally, when in reality, if you can go ahead and take control of that internal game and master it, you can influence and manifest what you want externally. But what does that come down to? You understanding the internal game, you understanding yourself, because if you can't do it for yourself, you're not going to be able to do it for anybody else. So if you can't understand what's going on in your internal environment, how are you going to understand your external environment? And you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. But once you actually tune in to who you are and what you want and why you want it, and you have that deep understanding, everything externally will change and it'll attract everything you want.
Well, and I think too, so many people get hung up, excuse me, on trying to find their purpose, on like trying to find who they are and to like tap into that I think it almost becomes daunting for people, and they don't know like how to proceed. But I know for me with Tammin, because now we've been talking about it for a while, I was kind of like not a believer at first. I was like, seems a little woo-woo, like this whole manifestation thing.
That should be our sister podcast, woo-woo.
Woo-woo, exactly.
That should be our merchandise, woo-woo.
Woo-woo.
What is that?
Got woo-woo. So I definitely, after talking to Tammin and really, kind of really zoning in on it, and like just starting, for me, I know I just started with gratitude to kind of get to that place where I felt like, okay, I want to step into this manifestation thing and like really try it out. It's like, it was kind of like, that was like the beginning, like just being grateful for what I have already. And also just, putting out there, like how you do in manifestation is what you want, but you have to be clear about it. Right. Because I didn't realize that sometimes saying the things you don't want can actually bring you those things. Right.
Right.
Oh, I love that you said the word clear for a second. And the reason why is because, I always tell everybody the way that you actually get clear on what you want and how you actually bring it out. So it comes down to love, right? First, let's talk about with another individual. And Will Smith actually talks about this. He says love is spelled L-U-V. What does that mean? Listen, to connect, to understand, and then validate. That's when it's with another individual. But first, you need to do it with yourself. You need to truly listen to yourself, have that deep connection where you really understand yourself, and then validate yourself by taking action in line with what you understand about yourself, right? And I think the portion of understanding comes down to this: disengage, forget social media, forget friends, forget family, take 24 hours for yourself, really sit there, no external influence at all, no TV, no nothing, just you, a notepad, and ask yourself simple questions. It doesn't need to be complex and hard. Simple, it might be simple, but hard, right? These simple questions such as, why am I doing what I wanted? Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it attached to my overall reason for wanting to fulfill a certain purpose, right? I think asking, why am I doing this? First, write down all your goals. Why do I want this? What does it mean to me? I think that's going to help you act with intention and get a step closer to actually, achieving that specific goal. And that's where the clarity, you need to understand those specifics in order to have that clarity. And you know what they say, when there's a will, there's a way. So when you have that kind of clarity, the way actually paves itself.
Good point. Yeah.
So I really think it takes doing work on yourself, but work is a 4-letter word that most people don't like because they're just surrounded by so much external noise.
Yeah. It feels hard to do the work sometimes. Like, I manifest, or I wanted to have a book, like to write a book. And now I don't know if I told Roxy this, but I write for the newspaper out here. And they like publish my columns. And I always said to my husband, like, I want to be like Carrie Bradshaw. And now I like have my own column. But I now have to write 500 to 700 words, like, twice a month. And so you're just like, oh, like now you have to do the work. Like, it's very easy to go, oh, I want a job on a TV show that I just booked yesterday. But it's like, oh God, now it's 6 weeks of like probably not being around my kids. And, it's just doing the work that I think sometimes feels hard, but when you're in it, maybe.
But I think it's also, different kind of work, right? At the same time, look, yes, something that you just said, it feels hard because of your perception, how you're perceiving. But how many times have you, gone to do something and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I made it seem like, right? But
normally you love it. Like you love it. Like I feel like when I get a job, like an acting job, I almost like talk myself out of it. And then when I'm there, I feel like I'm flying. But it's only because I'm protecting myself because I'm afraid of failure. And I know that now. I know that, I just got this job yesterday at 6 weeks and I'm already doing the same things, right? It's my old thought patterns. And I'm like, oh, well, is this even a good job for me? Like, do I really want to be away from my family? Like, what about COVID? What about like all these things I'm trying to make excuses? And then what I normally do is I normally write the excuses down now and I go, okay, what's a real excuse and what is fear? And most of my excuses are always based in fear. And then fear of what? Fear of failure. And I think I think once I figured that out, like my whole life is changing. I'm like, I'm afraid because I was a child actor at 14. So I was very successful at 14. So how do you go from there? Like, if you're already at the top when you're so young, then you always feel like you're failing unless the next thing is bigger and bigger. I was the face of Pepsi, like you said, at 17. Like, how do you keep getting bigger than that?
You got to break the fear cycle. Once again,
you got to break that cycle.
It's coming down to perception. So I'm going to break it down real quick for you because look at what you said. Okay. Valid reasons and then fear, right? So what I call the fear cycle, fear leads into dissociation. Dissociation leads into a loss meaning that you can't contribute because you're not fully present, right? Which leads into a certain state of, an angry emotion because you're not fully giving it your all. And then once it's actually time to go back and do that thing, guess what? That emotion takes over. Emotion is a perception. So how you feel will dictate how you act, and then it's disengaging again. So I think that fear is actually built the first 7 years of life because who are you around? It's your parents usually, the first 7 years of life. So it's not even your fear. It's based off assumption of what we've seen growing up. So assumption will keep you from the truth. So actual experience and going through and trying it yourself is going to give you real knowledge, and that's true power, and that'll help you live your true life.
But it's then once you've been instilled with all of that, it's like breaking it down as like a whole other, job. And I think like even as we get older, breaking down the fear, I mean, you can be 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, still trying to break it down. But I think also too, it's never too late to start doing that.
Well, the older you get, the harder it's going to be because you're already conditioned to think in that certain mindset, right? So the longer you're actually, repetition makes permanence. So the longer amount of time that you're actually, in a certain mindset, the less likely you're going to break out of it.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. Maybe I'm like an eternal optimist. I'm like, I feel like
no, there definitely is.
There
definitely is, but I think it takes that person to come in and shake up your perspective to help you realize it, because we're all surrounded by the same thinking. But I know I went completely off topic, guys. I want to apologize.
Did we, or was it just the perfect topic that we needed to be on?
I hope you guys got some value too. I got some value.
Oh, definitely. I love it.
I'm going to make sure my wife watches this like 10 times so she knows how to, manage her time properly.
Yeah. And just, and this is the thing that because I'm sure you have a lot of men who listen to this show. Like if your wife has just had a baby or has young children, it's a lot on them emotionally and physically, and they don't feel like the same person. And I know that also men feel like they're kind of left out, or they feel left in the cold, or they feel like, why won't my wife be intimate with me? And it has nothing to do with the man. They love their husbands, or I would assume most of them do. It's a big shift, and in so many ways, and it's like, I definitely was different when I first had my first baby, and yet I think I'm so much better now as just a mother and a wife and connected to my husband. But it takes time, and it shakes shakes your wife up for a little bit, shakes the woman up for a little bit. And I get men on my Instagram saying like, well, what can I do? Like, we haven't had sex, or she doesn't seem to like me, or she's always angry at me. And I'm like, you know what? If and when you can, just go take her on a date. Don't talk about the kids. Just sit there and like, women are very, fortunately or unfortunately, are always about like, you look so beautiful. I love you. You're such a good mom. Like that makes a woman feel like they're validated, like they're seen, like they're heard, and then they can see their partner again, And like when my husband got kind of overwhelmed, I got even angrier, not overwhelmed, but was like, well, why are you like this? And I got even more frustrated. But when he was like, you're doing such a great job, and I'm so proud of you, and look how much you've done, like you've birthed a baby, I was like, felt so connected to him. So I think sometimes, yes, it might not be exactly the subjects that you guys talk about on this show, but I know a lot of men feel sometimes like thrown out in the cold when their wives and girlfriends have children. And
I was ready for that because I read the books, and the book said, okay, when you have the kid, nobody's going to pay attention to you. Everybody's always going to ask, how's a wife and how's a kid? That's it. Nobody cares about you anymore.
Yeah.
But no,
I think they actually don't care about the mom either. I think once you have the baby, which is unfortunate, they're like, how's the baby? How's the baby? I think there's not really a set up system for the mother. Like we don't really celebrate the mother. We celebrate the baby. I mean, we do in the beginning when the birth happens or when she's pregnant, but it's like, and then it's kind of like, just get on with it, So I think it's a time and a place that just kind of shakes up everything. But God, if I have a third kid, it'll be so different because you go through it. And so that you'll get through the other side,
100%.
Yeah, it just takes a lot of patience, I think, from your partner because, like Tammin's saying, but hormones are all over the place and, you yourself don't feel in your body even after you have the kids. So it's like, until that regulation sort of comes and you get on some sort of a sleep schedule, where you're getting some consistent sleep, it's kind of like the wild, wild west, right? It's like
survival.
It's survival. It is survival. But I think too, like what you're saying was totally true. Women, I think, love to hear things like compliments, things like that, whereas men tend to be more visual. So I think that's another really good point as to like how Tammin was saying is like, compliment your wife, tell her, sweet things, like be very supportive, and kind of go that route.
For sure.
100%. I think that once again comes down to understanding them and what they're going through and then really being there for them, that support system. So I completely agree with you guys, but I know we did hit the time mark. So guys, if anybody wants to follow you, get in contact with you to get more insight on things that they could do either as mothers or women entrepreneurs, where can they find you guys?
Well, we are Women on Top Official on Instagram, and my handle is at Tammin Sursok. I obviously talk a lot about the podcast, but I also make very funny reels. That's kind of like, I try to make people laugh through all the pain. And then I also have a movie called Breaking for Whales, which is on Apple TV, which I wrote and my husband directed. So
am I going to be in your next movie?
Yes, you are. Just because you asked.
Right. I like that.
And you can also find us on Women on Top podcast on Facebook. And we have a Clubhouse group, Women on Top as well. And my personal handle is Red Carpet Roxy with a Y. And I cover red carpets and, Hollywood is opening up again. So I'm going to be more on the red carpet and doing some fun interviews on my website, redcarpetroxy.com, and on my social media, and just excited to get back out there, after the crazy year we've had.
Well, Tammin,
thank you so much for having us.
I do appreciate you guys joining me, and I hope to do it again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.